It is with very rare exception, almost entirely unknown to mankind, that a member of the human race acts out of a pure intention of evil, in the sense that the thoughts which they harbor, words which they say, and/or actions which they commit are done so with the intent of inflicting what they believe to be unjustified harm, damage, or calamity with no moral or ethical purpose. That is to say that most people claim justification for their thoughts, words, and deeds, and in that they garner some sense of moral sanction and ease of conscience, regardless of how malicious, hurtful, or damaging these might be to others. This sense of justice does not account for absolute truth, simply one's perspective, motive, and purpose. It does not account for one's lack of education, insight, or knowledge, nor for one's illogical deductions, inferences based on paranoia or fears, and prejudices based on upbringing and environment. One can feel supremely justified in hatred of a single person, those with a shared philosophy of life, politics, or faith system, entire ethnic group, or any cluster of folk whom they deem to be the other. This hatred based on concrete facts or theoretical, mythical, or historical fears of what this other could, would, or should do, which is at odds with one's own cultural, religious, or economic security and interests. This sense of justified hatred, prejudice, and/or otherness allows one to maintain destructive thoughts, words, and deeds and still feel that they are good, that they are wholesome, that they are respectable folk, allowing them to hold their head up high when amongst peers and sleep peacefully when home in their bed at night. Without this sense of justified evil, which is really what we are talking about here, we could not feel we were good people, and would feel shame in public and intense dis-ease in private. But we must be able to walk in the knowledge and assurance that we are good people if we are to maintain some sense of sanity and self-assurance in our being on a daily basis. We also cannot deny that we hold a tendency toward hatred, fear, and malice toward others whom we feel are not simpatico with our own ideas, philosophies, perspectives, or interests, regardless of the merit of this anxiety. Thus, to allow these two polar opposite states of being to coexist, that of our need to be perceived as a good person and our tendency toward evil, we create what we deem to be moral and ethical justifications of this evil within the context of our paradigm, which puts us in the right, others in the wrong, and giving us the moral high ground from which to condemn and attack those outside of which we consider to be our own kind. In this way, we get to operate in the mindset that we are a good person, while at the same time holding evil within us, which we harbor and enact toward others. The us versus them paradigm. Within each culture, over the course of time and across geographic regions, regardless of whether that culture be macro or micro, from the largest ethno-political region to the smallest cell of family, friends, or associates, there are standards which confirm your identity as a good person, of a person who should be respected and held in esteem within that culture, and the justification for this perceived goodness, relative as it may be, which is wholly fabricated by the members of the culture in question. One very familiar cultural disparity, which most of us have come to witness firsthand, is that which exists between households, even neighboring households, which reside within the same community, with the same economic conditions, the same geographic influences and concerns, the same political and social constructs. What it means to be a good person or good family member in one household is likely to be at least slightly, if not starkly different from the neighbor immediately next door. In one household, contributing to the family may have economic meaning, while in the next it may mean being emotionally supportive and encouraging. In the one, being active in the community, creating status, power, and influence, while in the other developing one's own intellectual and academic prowess and acumen. In the one, having order and structure. In the other, being spontaneous and easygoing. And even within these household cultures are subcultures of the same. Shades of tolerance or intolerance, sympathetic or contrary to those of close family, friends, and neighbors. On the largest of scales, what it means to be a good person in society on the whole, while nuances exist at all levels, there stands a common agreement, a social compact, which is used as the metric for the perceived goodness of its citizens. Does the person conform to the prescribed systems of education, economics, and social structure? Are they polite and agreeable in speech? Do they contribute professionally and politically to the welfare of the whole? Do they don agreeable clothing, hairstyle, accessories, and makeup or markings? And by extension, do they harbor acceptable beliefs and non-threatening philosophies? Are they patriotic and loyal to the powers that be? Do they avoid rocking the boat and bucking the system? These are all measures of what it means to be considered a good person within societies. And if the only society one ever experiences is the one in which they were born and or raised, it becomes easy to feel that is the one and only acceptable version of what it means to be good, which makes it very easy to see others as bad. If one travels across social, political, and cultural boundaries to experience societies with different standards and perspectives, one sees that rules and regulations of societies, accepted viewpoints and philosophies, vary from one to another, sometimes nuanced, sometimes stark. And if one travels yet more, they find that the definition of a good person is not consistent from one place to another, and that the superficial and local constructs which we fashion between and amongst ourselves in various ways and to varying degrees is solely dependent upon subjectivity of specific peoples with specific experiences and specific interests. As the writer Mark Twain once said, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. While this is true, it is not widely applied within local cultural precepts. We still tend to hold one another to rather narrow-minded ideas of what it means to be a good person, outside of absolute and universal measures which strip goodness down to simply how one treats others with kindness and compassion, how one cares for their health, the health of others, and the health of the planet, our home. We tend to hold others to expectations which reinforce the us versus them paradigm and conformity considerations. These are the two driving forces behind the measure of goodness of persons within defined societies and cultures. Thus, to survive, earn a living, be accepted by others within our localities, we adopt these ideals of perceived goodness to our benefit, the ideals of an identifiable and agreeable us, and that of conformity within the group. Many of us do so out of sheer ignorance, because, again, taught from a very young age not to question the system, its authority, or its foundations. We go along to get along. And some of us, more critical and questioning by nature, don't want to seem contrary to the system out of the need to survive it, and, indeed, to thrive within it. The alternative requires great effort and sacrifice, abandoning one's family and geography, hoping to find a more agreeable circumstance. And by the time someone achieves their majority and is able to see the fabricated constructs of society, and then to decide whether they agree with and can abide by these tenets, they are so deeply invested in the system that it can be crippling to their livelihood to do anything about it. What, then, are we to do? We conform within it to the degree required to maintain our situation, and we keep our thoughts to ourselves. But, again, based on the idea that we must maintain the ideals of what it means to be a good person within our society, locality, and community. If we extend this logic to faith systems, it serves to explain why those which dominate geographic areas are accepted unquestioningly by those born into those locales to be considered good people. For years, decades, centuries in Western culture, this has been the tenets of Christianity, of the Church of Rome, brought to the fore nearly 1,700 years ago by Constantine and the political, military, and religious factions under his influence. In Eastern traditions, Hinduism, established more than 4,000 years ago, and later traditions such as Confucianism, Buddhism, and Islam, among many others, serve a similar function. The many maintain these philosophies because of upbringing and the culture which surrounds them at large. It is rare to find someone raised within a dominant faith culture who is able to step outside of it to embrace one of foreign origin or nature. This is because to function within the society in which we are spawned, we must be seen as trustworthy, at least to a degree, and this requires that others feel we are in agreement, both by function and philosophy, with that society. We must prove ourselves as being one of the accepted and embraced, us, and not as one of the alien and threatening, them. And we do so, knowingly or unknowingly, to survive and maintain our situation, to be accepted and liked, held in some esteem and respected, allowed to work, operate, and trade within that society without fear of conflict or reprisal. This is the reality, the societal fog, which is referred to as the good person paradox.